Okay,
Yes.
this is the last segment. You've got to do this bit to qualify for the free drinks reception. So just think of it that way, okay? So we're now entering into our Z Clause of the Year award. Z clauses, can be additional clauses or amendments to existing clauses. We need Z clauses to make bespoke to different sectors of the industry. We just don't need as many that get written. And sometimes they can be positive. I have seen some positive Z clauses where they've actually introduced elements that maybe we think, we're in favour of that and we want those to be included in the contract. So occasionally they can be positive, but not often enough. So my recommendation for clients, think about and challenge if a Z clause is really necessary. If a Z clause is to alter the risk profile, or what costs will that be? Because if you're putting extra risk onto a contractor, they're inevitably going to price that risk. So is it really as simple as, just put the risk onto the contractor? I think we've heard talks that says there's a shift in that recognises that, okay, even clients realise that is not always the case. Follow the principles of the contract in terms of clarity, word count, and contractual language. Flowchart any proposed amendments to ensure that they work and they don't create their own ambiguities. Contractors advise read the Z clauses and amended contracts at tender stage to understand what has been changed and how that alters risk profile. Get help where necessary. There's a few people in this room that can help you if you ask. Challenge any clauses you would not want to be wanting to sign up to before you sign the contract is the best advice I can give you. It's not as good idea to argue after the case. And contractors don't have a generic set of Z clauses you would pass down to subcontractors other than those ones that are absolutely necessary for internal governance. I won't ask for a show of hands on that one. Regular frustrating amendments that we see. So 17.1, 63.10, amendments to make ambiguities in the client scope a contractor risk. So we haven't got time to put right our rubbish, we'll make you take that risk. That doesn't seem that clever. I slightly paraphrase. 60.1, deletion of 60.1 brackets 12 and 13, making ground conditions or weather a contractor risk. 11.2, good industry practice defined a term or allegedly a defined term, but normally so wordy and woolly it could mean pretty much anything. I've already mentioned additional disallowed costs is a regular frustration of ours. And 61.3, making all compensations time barred, not just the ones the contractor is obliged to notify. I'm a bit worried about the people who are taking photos here. Are you using this for inspiration? Okay. Deletion, let's carry on. Deletion, there's a few more yet if you want to wait till the end. Deletion of deemed acceptance loops for compensation quotes, programmed, leaving things open-ended. So clients take away the ability for contractors to remind them they're not doing their job so they can not do their job. Doesn't seem the smartest move. NEC4 Z clauses, excuse me, that uses the word he and his. NEC4 is gender neutral. It's an important change that NEC4 made, and yet Z clauses add back in he and his into the contract, which is very easy to avoid. Subcontractors, adding in this ability to contracharge. Sorry, contractors, could you explain what that is? What is no, don't try. So contracharge, you're just making up a way of we're going to charge you money that we hadn't thought of and we're just going to call it a contracharge. And requirement in the ECS for a subcontractor to comply with everything in the ECC main contract. Anyone want to confess to that one? A lot of contractors do this, sign up to everything in the main contract. We're giving you the chance. We put together a concise contract for you. And by the way, you've got to comply with everything in the main contract. It's available at a head office on a Tuesday if it's raining. So nominations for the worst Z clauses are, and the names have been removed to protect the guilty. I didn't want to be sued, Richard, so I've taken the names off. 90.2, you might be familiar with the termination table. We've just done a seeker bulletin. There are some spare copies there. They'll only go to recycling if people don't take them. So do feel free to grab a copy of the seeker bulletin. The latest one is number 54 on termination. Not the most exciting content, but it's a subject that needs covering. So termination table, the Z clause was delete A4 so that the contractor is not entitled to profit on the remaining works removed from them, even though the termination is not their fault. So You could discuss whether that's right or wrong, but certainly the principle of the contract is it's included. So clients removing that. And a lot of contractors don't spot that because it's not an obvious one to look for, but that would be what it would mean. Unlikely to happen, but if it does happen, then the contractor's going to be terminated and not incur or be able to claim profit on the work that's been taken off them. So not great. Program acceptance, I won't read that clause. Everyone should be very familiar with this clause, 31.3, the 4 reasons for not accepting a program. Okay, we can have a little discussion about practicable or not representing the plans realistically. There's a bit of overlap, I agree. And generally, we can be fairly objective rather than wildly subjective. So those are the 4 standard reasons. An extra reason was added into this contract as this. Okay, it changes the order or timing of activities shown by the contractor on an earlier accepted program. So planners, don't change the program. Otherwise, it could be not accepted. And again, we laugh at these. This is a real contract clause that has occurred more than once in the last year. So we want to be questioning and challenging these. 61.3, if the contractor doesn't notify a compensation within 8 weeks of becoming aware, the completion date, the prices are not changed unless it arises from the project manager giving instruction, change of decision. So you recognise there the certain compensation events the contractor's time barred on, the ones the project manager is obliged to notify, then they're not time barred on. So a Z clause here, they deleted the word 8 weeks down to 2 weeks. Now, the reason I highlight this one, NEC 2 used to say 2 weeks. After much deliberation from experienced people and lawyers, the advice was that 2 weeks was not legally enforceable. So reluctantly, NEC extended it to 8. I say reluctantly because on a practical basis, 2 weeks is great, but it's not practical really to make that as a legally enforceable time bar. So the 8 weeks was judged as is a time bar that would stick. Yeah, this client is saying, no, we reckon 2 weeks is fine. Now, that could be tested, but you'd have to go all the way through dispute and courts to test it. And in the meantime, you'd have to accept that that's it. Yes, you can say notification should be quick, but 2 weeks, taking it back to what NEC removed in the first place, doesn't seem like a smart move. Now, there were many nominations, and I could have done a lot more, but I'm worried certain people would take too many photos of these, so we've cut these ones short. So I'm just going to cut to what I consider to be the winner of the Z clause of the year 2025. Okay, let me build this up. So red, I think, doesn't come out this well. I'll read it, though. So it's to do with instructions. And it's a new clause. You'll know this because it stops at 27.4 normally. So 27.5 says, subject to clause 27.6, if the contractor purports to give any instruction to the subcontractor or his authorised representative otherwise than in writing, it is of no immediate effect and the subcontractor asks the contractor to provide a written confirmation instead. Subject to clause 27.6, any instruction provided by the contractor to the subcontractor pursuant to this clause 27.5 only takes effect as from the date the contractor's written confirmation of that instruction. Now, bear with me, because that is not in itself, if that was it, that wouldn't win the award, okay? But let's look at some observations on 27.5. Some of the core principles of NEC 4 is about making sure that no sentence is more than 40 words long, it's gender neutral, we don't cross-reference, and we don't dream up new phrases. That first sentence breaks all 4 of those pretty cleverly by breaking all of those. But the gist of 27.5, I've got a problem with. It's basically saying very long-windedly that if we give a written instruction, well, you shouldn't follow it. So it's kind of a long-winded way of saying that. But then it says subject to 27.6. It's like, okay, what does that say? Well, 27.6 says, and this is the award-winning bit, notwithstanding the provisions of clause 27.5, the contractor is entitled to demand immediate compliance with a verbal instruction. I'm glad you can laugh. There's an approving nod down here saying, yeah. So where instructions are issued by the contractor under this clause 27.6, the contractor shall provide written confirmation of that instruction as soon as practicable. Oh, that's okay then. Sorry, I didn't see that last bit. That's fine then, as long as it's as soon as practicable. Let's follow the rules, shall we? Let's follow the contractual rules. And someone's gone to the trouble to add that in. And every year we say it. We're hoping for less nominations next year, but we'll see how we go. Okay, deliberately cut that bit short because we all know Z clauses should be tried and tested, and we don't want to challenge, or we shouldn't be challenging the core principles of the contract with stuff that alters risk profile and undermines the very essence that NEC is trying to achieve.